Hi guys. Let's talk a little bit about the match of Zverev and Djokovic. Um, for said win for Djokovic, that um, it was a pretty good match. I definitely think that Zverev is getting a little more. He's getting better in his game. His serve is really good. I mean that's no brainer, of course, but I think that his game in general, he's becoming a more intelligent player. He's still struggling a little bit, probably, I think, with his emotions, with his self control. But overall, I definitely think that he's become a more complete player, a little more. I think has a more self belief that he can beat those um, the big guys. The, in the major tournaments. It didn't happen today, and it must have been pretty tough on him, especially knowing that Djokovic was not at his 100%. Now I know Djokovic had that injury, and I saw the match when he had that injury, and I didn't think he was going to come back actually to play the next match. But one of the things that I one of the things that I truly believe that are very underrated about Djokovic is his mental toughness. Because when he started his career, he will retire from matches for things that seem for reasons that you would think that other players will never, not will never quit, but sometimes he had problems breathing. He had, I don't know, some kind of injuries that sometimes um, people judge or misjudge and say, hey, I never seen Federer doing that, or I never seen Nadal retiring for something like that. And the truth is that many times we don't know what's really going on behind, in the story with every player. But definitely one thing that when we talk about players that are tough mentally, we always talk about Federer, we talk about Nadal, and we talk about Djokovic, but usually it's Nadal the one that everybody looks and they say, oh, he's super tough. And I have to say that I don't think, if we look at the story of Djokovic, where he came from a country that was war torn, he grew up in a difficult environment, becoming such a magnificent player. And let's not forget that this is a guy that in two different periods, at first he was a guy that came from behind, being number three and getting tired of being the third best player in the world, and saying, okay, after years and years and years of seeing Federer and Nadal um, fighting and getting the number one spot in the world, going from one and the other, and Djokovic will always be there, just kind of looking at them like, okay, just got hit, you're number one, and now you are, and I'm still number three, and I've beaten both of you, but I just cannot do it consistently, until things happen. I believe it was 2010, 2011, when he won the Davis Cup, and that's when, and a story told by himself, he says, that's when I got the idea that, okay, that was a self belief. That was the moment when he said, okay, I think I have the game to be consistent and beat these guys and win major tournaments, grab the number one spot and keep it, not let it go after a few weeks or a few months, and be fighting for it, which is, I think I believe that's one of the things that is very, that is probably the most difficult thing to acquire or to get, when a player knows that he has the game to do it, but many times they don't have the mentality. And you can see, the story, you see the story of players like Kyrgios, that he very clearly will tell you, I don't practice like those guys. I don't have the discipline, and I don't have the head to say, hey, let's check the schedule. What am I gonna do after this? And I'm gonna go over there. And I mean, he's saying, I really don't like to play without the public. It's difficult for me. And you have players like him that are very talented, but sometimes they don't have. They have the game. They have what you see on the court. They have what we can see. they don't have what we cannot see that other players have. And sometimes you have players that they have not nearly as much talent. Players probably um, like um, I'm trying to remember a Spanish player that he was a very good player. He was in the top 10 in the world for such a long time. One of the other players that I can think about is Roddick. That the guy was not as he had a massive serve. He had a good forehand, but overall, I don't think he was extremely talented. Like, and but the guy had the mindset. He had the he was hungry to be number one in the world. It might have happened just for a few weeks or so, but in the end, the guy won a major tournament, and he was in the top 10 in the world for a long time. I'm thinking other players like Kevin Anderson. I'm thinking other players like the couple of players that just cannot remember the names right now. But we've seen players that they're not as talented, but they have the heart and the head to say, okay, I just if I stay disciplined and I build, the mentality to stick, to stay in the fight even when things get really difficult, and they get to do that. And things many times, things turn out their way. Sometimes they win matches that we just don't believe, because you say this guy is nowhere near as good or as talented as this other player, and he's still winning. So what I see in Djokovic is this guy has dominated. He dominated Nadal and Federer when he after 2010, 2011, and then the guy had an injury and he was out for months, and then he came back, and a lot of people thought that he was not going to be able to go back to the position where he was, and he did totally. So I'm talking a guy that he not only came from behind, seeing everything going to the top two players in the world back then, which were Nadal and Federer, and he had to put up with all that stuff, and he's saying it's no easy task. He had to be better than Federer, that was already considered the best player in the history of the game, and the guy that is the best player, fighting for the best player in the history of the game and best player on clay. So if you think about it, it was massive. It's massive to think like, how am I really gonna get to be better than these two guys? And he did it once, he got injured, and he came back, and he did it twice. And let's not forget that he had a streak, like a period of there when he was beating Nadal. I believe there was like a moment where he won like 10 or 12 matches in a row until Nadal got to beat him once. But he is, to me, I think that Djokovic is the only player that has achieved. He's the only player that has gotten, at least during a certain moment in time. There was a time when Djokovic got in Nadal's head to the point that he completely dominated him. And if we go and look in the records for the last 20 matches or the last 15, Djokovic is way ahead, still way ahead of Nadal. And so we're talking about a guy that in two different periods he has dominated probably the two most exceptional players the world have seen so far. I believe that the Djokovic, if he keeps it up, in the end, he's very probably gonna be the one guy. It's not even gonna be Rafa or Roger. It's probably gonna be him, the one with the most major tournaments and the greatest of all time. And the way things go, he's very probably gonna be. He's younger than he's the youngest of the three, and he's still playing very well. The guy, it's exceptional what he did, going out there and getting an injury on the stomach when he could barely move, and coming back and beating guys like Zverev. It's just what you gotta have in the head to do something like that is just something that I think that none of us is familiar because we never done it. But I know I know that there is a lot of people out there that don't know, that don't like him, but I think that um, you don't have to agree with everything a person does, or you don't have to like that person, but you have to be smart enough to say, okay, I can still learn something from this person. I can still see the good, what makes this person successful. Why is this person successful? Why has this person achieved this much? If you're the kind of person, if you're the kind of person that is trying to find an explanation or something to make seem to make it seem like everything that person has achieved hasn't been that great, then I think you're approaching the story in a very different, in a wrong, with the wrong perspective. So let's see what happens. Nadal in the tournament is being Nadal, is exceptional. He still hasn't played any player that has really put any good fight against him. Um, let's see how Sissipas does. I think Sissipas is improving as well, but I do not think that he's at the level to be toe to toe with Nadal in at least in 5 sets. If they were in a regular tournament, 2 out of 3, I think he can beat him. But your game to be Nadal, your game has to be you have to play very well for 3 or 4 hours, exceptionally well. And it's not only that, you gotta be up here. You gotta be ready. And I'm sure the players in the tour know it. They say I'm sure they know there can be several players, and I'm meaning several players that say, okay, I know that if I have a good day, with my game can be Nadal. But even if I'm hitting the ball perfect, I still have to keep. They know that they still have to keep the mentality, the belief for those 3 or 4 or 5 hours against Nadal, which is the difficult part. The difficult part is not. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but out of the physical and the physical is where most of more many or several players at least may have a chance against Nadal. But mentally is where it's for any that's why I thought that theme Dominic Thiem was ready to win a major tournament because I have already seen him playing Nadal on Grand Slams and going the distance. And I always thought, I said, this guy is mentally, he's ready. Um, being ready doesn't mean he's gonna do it, but the guy knows he has the mindset to set foot on the court, knowing that he's gonna play Nadal and say, I can stay mentally tough for 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And it requires a player that is really prepared for that. And the way this guy plays, and the way and he has proved it. Yeah, I mean, Team has already proved that he can do it. I don't know if he's gonna do it ever, being at a major tournament. But definitely, I think that he's one of the very few players that have the mentality to at least stay in the fight with Nadal. So, anyways, I think it was you have to learn to look at those matches. Even if you don't like Djokovic, you have to learn to look at those matches and say, okay, what can I learn from this? What can I get out of this? Because that's it's not something thinking of him. That's the way you gotta be able to look at your opponents when you go and play matches. That's the way you have to look at the things that you're fighting against, whatever is on your way in life, whatever you're doing. Looking at it and trying to minimize it and trying to criticize it and trying to think that the other person just got things easy for whatever reason, or the circumstances are against you. is not going to help. And I think that one of the things that Djokovic changed in his mentality, that he knew that he knew that his game back in the day before he became number one, his game compared to Nadal and Federer was really close. But he knew that when the way he was approaching the game, the way he was thinking and behaving was far below. So he had to raise the standards, and he knew that in order to beat Federer and Nadal consistently, he had to raise the standards and make it his way of living. It's not just like, okay, when I play these guys, this is when I'm really gonna change. He had to be that higher standard 24/7 on and off the court. All right, let's see what happens, and I'll see you next time. Thank you guys. Bye.